The absurdity of conquest. Commander Red and Toriyama's satire of war. While Akira Toriyama's Dragon Ball is universally celebrated as a foundational pillar of the battle shonen genre, its earlier arcs are deeply rooted in gag comedy and sharp, often subversive satire. The Red Ribbon Army arc stands as one of the series' most brilliant thematic achievements. On its surface, it is a globetrotting adventure where a young boy fights a heavily armed military organization. But underneath the martial arts and sci-fi weaponry lies a biting critique of militarism. Through the alternate reveal of Commander Red's true ambition, Toriyama masterfully frames war as a profoundly pointless exercise, driven not by grand ideologies, but by the fragile egos and petty insecurities of the men in charge. The illusion of grand military grandeur. For the majority of the arc, the Red Ribbon Army is presented as a legitimate and terrifying global menace. They possess limitless resources, advanced technology, and a ruthless willingness to subjugate entire populations, such as the village in the snowy north or the indigenous tribes in the sacred land of Korin, all in pursuit of the Dragon Balls. To the soldiers on the ground and the citizens caught in the crossfire, the army represents the terrifying monolithic face of fascism and imperial expansion. The aesthetic Toriyama chose for the army leans heavily into real-world military tropes. They operate out of a highly fortified headquarters, wear strict uniforms, and employ a strict hierarchy of officers named after colors. Everything about the Red Ribbon Army implies a drive for world domination. This makes the eventual subversion of their motives all the more impactful. The punchline of power, the genius of Toriyama's critique, crystallizes in the arc's climax, validating a deeply cynical view of geopolitical conflict. When Staff Officer Black assumes the Dragon Balls are being gathered to conquer the world, Commander Red reveals the truth. He has sacrificed countless lives, spent vast fortunes, and waged a global war simply to wish to be a few inches taller. This is a stunningly direct metaphor for the nature of territorial warfare. In the real world, wars of expansion are frequently waged by leaders seeking to increase their nation's borders, metaphorically and physically expanding the mass and power of their state to project dominance. Toriyama brilliantly literalizes this concept. Commander Red's desire for vertical height is a physical manifestation of a dictator's need for expansion. Just as a tyrant might throw thousands of soldiers into a meat grinder to move a line on a map a few miles outward to soothe an insecure ego, Red is willing to burn the world to the ground to add a few inches to his own stature. Stripping militarism of its nobility, Toriyama was known for his fascination with mechanical design, vehicles, and military aesthetics. But he consistently used his narratives to mock the institutions of war. By reducing the Red Ribbon Army's grand crusade to a cosmetic insecurity, Toriyama strips militarism of all its manufactured nobility. There is no glorious cause, no patriotic duty, and no grand vision for the future. There is only a small, insecure man compensating for his perceived shortcomings at the expense of human life. When Staff Officer Black learns the truth, he is so disgusted by the pointlessness of his comrades' deaths that he assassinates Commander Red. Black attempts to pivot the army's goal back to the respectable villainy of world domination. But the veil has already been lifted. The military machine is exposed as a farce. The pure-hearted foil. To perfectly contrast this critique, Toriyama pits this massive egotistical war machine against Goku. Goku is entirely detached from concepts of conquest, borders, or political power. His motivation is intimately personal and beautifully simple. He wants to retrieve the 4-star Dragon Ball that belonged to his grandfather, and he wants to protect the people he meets along the way. Goku's dismantling of the Red Ribbon Army is the final nail in the coffin for Toriyama's anti-war thesis. The most heavily armed, systematically organized military force on the planet is utterly destroyed by a child with a pure heart and a stick. Conclusion. The Red Ribbon Army arc is a masterclass in using humor to highlight the absurdity of human conflict, by equating a global military campaign to a man's desire to simply be a little bit taller. Akira Toriyama points out a grim truth about human history. The devastating machinery of war is all too often fueled by the petty, quiet insecurities of the people sitting safely at the top.